Oh my gosh, we're live. I'm so
All
excited,
right.
Sejal.
We are live. Okay, everybody, welcome to the Nobody Studio Inside Culture live show. The question that we're going to be talking about today is team building still relevant in today's virtual working world? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
Yes, and I would argue, and Kimberly would probably agree, that it's more important now than ever, right? So if you want to listen to this conversation, you're going to learn how to achieve the benefits of virtual team building. You're going to learn how to create remote teams that rock. So don't stop listening to this episode, all right? So Kimberly Wiefling is my go-to expert on this important topic. Welcome to the show, Kimberly.
Sejal, so good to be with you virtually, but I feel connected heart to heart.
Here, I'm going to give you a heart because
Oh, that's
that's
so
how I
sweet. You
connect
know
with
what?
you.
I love that. We have to express ourselves using something beyond words these days, and visually, there's all kinds of tools
Oh,
available.
I love it. I love it. Last year at Nobody Studios, I was tasked with putting together our first virtual team building event. And I knew exactly who to call. It was my good friend Kimberly. And literally within 15 minutes, we're on the phone for 15 minutes. She helped me design and agreed to co create a fun and inspiring experience for our team at Nobody Studios. And so let me just tell everybody a little bit more about you, Kimberly, because you've got a resume that's longer than I don't know, most books, I would say. But Kimberly, Kimberly is an expert in remote and hybrid team building, organizational culture. She's a physicist by education. She worked for HP for 10 years, 3 years in Silicon Valley. She's worked with over 50 Japanese companies with people all like over 50 different countries, helping organizations globally. And that's why I reached out to her because Nobody Studios, we started off in the virtual world. We built from the ground up during the pandemic. And now we have teams everywhere. So I know she would bring that global sort of superpower to the team building event. And her actual superpower, though, her claimed superpower, and I've seen her in action. So she turns managers into leaders. And what she does is brings people together in the way where you start to feel like you can make the impossible possible. And so she's described as the force of nature. And I'm sure you'll all get to see a little bit of her flavor during this episode. And what she's using that force to do is what we need more of people to do is make a significant positive impact on our world. And so I'm going to just go ahead and dive right in. So, Kimberly, is it just me? Or is team building getting a bad rep? Because I feel like team building has like a negative bias associated. Like during the pandemic, we're all on Zoom, we're on Google Meets, whatever virtual, video conferencing platform you use, and asking people to put in a couple extra hours on Zoom, you get the eye rolls going. People are battling Zoom fatigue. And it's like, it's so hard to get people to buy in on team building. So, what do you believe is like the secret, the overarching secret to unlocking the benefits of virtual remote team building?
Yeah, I agree with you, Sejal. It's so hard, especially in Silicon Valley among my techno friends. And I was a technologist in the beginning of my career. You say team building and they think touchy feely crap,
Yeah.
soft skills at the best. And, what people don't understand is the work that gets done is so dependent on the relationships among the people. There's this huge study for the last 30 years by Gallup on employee engagement. And
Mm.
if you don't have good relationships, then you have people just coming into work just to do their job in exchange for money, and they are not engaged or they're actively working against their own company. And when you're working with people that you really care about, who are a real team, not just a group of people, then you can really get stuff done in more productive ways. Every measure of business success improves.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, contrary to popular belief, right? Team building is not just about having a good time. I mean, the goal is to what? Enable trust. It's to encourage collaboration, improve communication. So everyone feels connected to the mission and feels like they're part of the team. And it's like, I say this to the leaders at Nobody Studios all the time. It's like the kind of connections that we want to feel with our team members are not going to just happen by accident. We have to proactively create these interactions to foster those stronger connections. Do you agree, Kimberly?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
is there?
think
It,
of professional sports teams. You think they don't practice? You think they just put a bunch of people into the same team who don't know each other? Heck no. They go into the locker room, they get to know each other, they practice, they build relationships, they build trust so they can play as a true team. If you have 11 strangers playing against the soccer team that's been together that really knows and trusts each other, they're never going to win.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only are they not going to win, but like I feel like, you know, for example, at the team building session you did with us at Nobody Studios, right? It was our first one where we were actually doing something to connect with each other in that way. We have a lot of one-on-ones. We regularly check in with our team members. We have Slack. So one of the first things that I did when I became the chief culture officer was start a sort of a Slack water cooler channel, because when you're in the office, you've got all these opportunities for those like random run-ins. Hey, Kimberly, how's life? How's everything going? But when you're working remotely, you don't have those sort of chance encounters to connect with one another, right? And so much research on this topic about just those even socializing outside of formal meetings in and of itself is going to create high performing teams, right?
Actually, you know, if you look at animals in the jungle, animals that eat together at the same watering hole, for example, don't kill each other. So if you have some meal together or hang out together and share even a donut, for crying out loud, there's a much better bond. It seems so simple, but it does matter.
Yeah. So, you know, the session that you facilitated for us, we had a lot of fun. I mean, our team members, you know, I checked in with several of them afterwards, and everybody had such a great time. And, you know, even several members, like during the event itself, the experience itself, said they felt energized. They felt connected.
Sejal, I like to just mention, I do not personally like having fun. But according to research, it's been made clear that teams who have fun together are stronger and they're 300% more creative. So we have to.
Yes, we do. And I've got people like chiming in with their comments, and they're finding what we're saying really valuable, and we're just getting started. So let's talk a little bit more. I'd like to share with people, you know, you've done hundreds, if not thousands, of these types of facilitations with different groups. And so I like asking people, you know, based on your observations of our session together at Nobody Studios, our leadership team, what do you feel like? Do you feel like we achieved our outcome for that experience? And tell us anything else you feel is noteworthy, right?
Okay,
From your own observations.
I was working with you all at the beginning, and everybody was kind of warming up and ice breaking and all. But towards the end of that session, which I just rewatched yesterday, by the way, just to relive the magic, people were so bonding. Who was the guy playing guitar?
Barry O'Reilly.
Barry O'Reilly, who playing guitar, and then people were really connecting and sharing personally. And then at the session was over, and you know, everybody's pretty darn busy. They stayed after it was over and just kept hanging out together. And do you want to talk about your hair that you wore that day?
Oh, that's right. I should have worn that wig today.
What was it? It was amazing. A beautiful blue wig. And you know, and people were playful. People had helmets on or masks on, and they were willing to take a few chances, you know, and be a little creative. And this, Sejal, this all goes back to making yourself vulnerable, right? Like if you're not willing to make yourself vulnerable with these people, that means you don't trust them. And number one cause of failure in global teams is they don't have trust.
Yeah, no. And speaking of the blue wig, right? I kind of wore it to be funny and entertaining, but I went through that internal dialogue right before we did the event of, I don't know. I mean, I'm the chief culture officer at the studio. Is this professional for me to be wearing this wig? Is this out of my character? Or, you know, and then I realized like, well, no, I mean, I truly feel like I belong with our leadership team, with our team at Nobody Studios. And I want them to see all these fun, silly parts of me as well. And plus, I like to have a good time. So I plan on bringing a lot more of that and bringing you back whenever I can, so we can do more of this work together, because there's so many important reasons for us to connect, right? So
well, you hit it, because what you did was you decided to wear that wild blue wig to make yourself vulnerable in a way that would invite other people to feel safe to do the same. And that is the number one way that leaders build trust, is to make themselves vulnerable. And by the way, that's not something you learn when you go to get your MBA, right? Because here you're supposed to look good, be right, and win.
So true. They don't teach you. They don't teach you just how to, human connection. How do we connect with one another? And so one question as I was sort of preparing for this that I wanted to ask you, because on one hand, technology has brought us a lot closer, right? And as I said, we've got team members all over the globe. So in a way, we're closer to people than we ever have been. But that human connection that we're talking about, you and I, how can we use this technology to help us bring better rapport with each other, to kind of bridge, I guess, that digital divide and bring stronger teams?
Let me give you some simple ones, right? Buy a bunch of glasses like this. Okay. I have so many of these things. I have, all these different glasses. But not only do I have it, my team members, I have a team called Silicon Valley Alliances. They're here and in Europe and in Singapore and in Japan and in Australia. And we all have these glasses. So whenever one of us puts them on, when we're working with clients or when we're hanging out, then the other person puts them on, and pretty soon we're all dressed the same. And we're wearing a little team costume. Or you can do other fun things, to kind of spice up. You can use these emojis on cardboard, or you can get yourself something, exciting to put on your head so that you can expand your thinking. But you've got to have some props. And by the way, all of these things that I've just showed you, they are tax deductible business expenses.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that one, but yeah.
Imagine a feather boa being a tax deductible business expense. I mean, for crying out loud.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you. I haven't been doing that. What? Okay.
Well,
I just learned something right now. I know I always learn from you, Kimberly. So, you did a really great exercise with our team when you did that session. And if you could just explain to people sort of what we did and why we did that, because here's what I want people to, kind of understand is, when I was tasked with building that virtual experience, I had to first think about what were some of the outcomes that I wanted to achieve. And so when I talked to Kimberly, that was one of the first questions she asked me. What do you hope to accomplish with this event? So we talked about that for a few minutes. And then right away, she gave me some ideas. So can you share with people the activity we did with our team? And then maybe you could share a couple other ones that you have, just to give people some ideas so they can start building remote teams that rock at their workplaces too.
Yeah. Well, thank you for working with me through that, because sometimes people call me and say, hey, help me do this. And I'm like, wait a second. Tell me big why, purpose, big who, stakeholders, big what, and measures of success, your goals. Otherwise, I don't know how to help you. So thank you for taking me through that. That made it much easier to design something that was going to really support your purpose and your goals for your people. What we did with your team, I did something I like to call news from the future. And what we started with was making some collages. We said, jump into the future. It's not just the future, it's the fabulous future. And all your dreams come true and more. Make a collage that communicates that fabulous future. Now, I've been doing this kind of collage workshop for over 20 years for my friends and family, but doing it in the workplace just started about 10 years ago. And what people do is they start to grab pictures, and it communicates something that their left brain intellectual side, the verbal side, can't grab. And so it's trying to get people to use different parts of their brain to communicate and express what would be difficult to say in words. And they're all making it together, right? So this joint shared collage. So you're doing shared collaboration. If you put your picture over top of mine, that doesn't work. So people naturally cooperate, like a flock of birds naturally flock together. Then after they get inspired by this shared creation, this visual creation, they come back and do a news report from the future, pretending they're broadcasting to tens of millions of people all over the world, perhaps even using a rubber chicken as a microphone, and just are asked to improvise and share without any evidence it's possible, and without knowing how, share a big, crazy dream. And the cool thing about this, Sejal, is so many of these dreams I've seen over the years, they're a dream until they become reality. And then they're like, wow, we were just playing, but hey, that happened.
I love that activity because what it did, is it helped us sort of look into the future, but also kind of get us thinking about, because it gets so, sometimes when we're, right now, everybody, for example, is we're laser focused. We have our sort of blinders on. We're doing our equity crowdfunding campaign right now. And so the leadership team is really focused in on this one goal, right? Of getting through the next 20 days. And so sometimes we get so caught up in our day to day that we forget to connect ourselves back to the mission, but also to look forward into the future. And it was powerful for me to see you kind of bring the team together in the way that you did.
Oh, oh yeah. Well, Sejal, you wouldn't drive your car with your eyes glued to the windshield wipers.
That's
But
right.
many of us are working like that. We come in and we're shoving against the tide, dealing with the latest crises. That's called Horizon One. And that's important. You got to get that stuff
Mm,
done. And Horizon Two is, yeah, let's do it better, faster, cheaper. Let's make little improvements and incrementalism. But what you really need to make huge breakthroughs and disruption, and I think this is what you and Nobody Studios is all about. You are about Horizon 3, taking a leap, leaping off the cliff, and while you're falling and screaming, growing wings and learning how to fly. And all of the experts are sitting back saying all the reasons why it's not possible, it's not going to work. And all the while you're going, you know what? We're going to prototype it. We're going to take risks. We're going to learn from mistakes and we're going to fail forward saying, woohoo, and keep it safe and fun so people aren't afraid to take
yes,
those risks. It's really tough.
absolutely.
The ego is strong.
That's true. That's true. And you just, as you were sharing that, example sort of popped into my head of, I've been doing these training workshops for a while now. And you think about like when you need somebody to have your back or you need someone to help you on something, are they more likely to help you if you feel connected to that person, if you feel like you could trust that person, if you have some good memories with them? Or are you going to be more willing to help the person that you walk by every day and you don't even know if they've got any kids or where they live or how long their commute is, right? So building these sort of environments or spaces becomes so important when most of our team at Nobody Studios, we haven't met each other. I've only met the leadership team one time. I've met Mark
Yeah.
McNally, our chief Nobody, a couple of times, right? And so
Yeah.
the only way we can work as a cohesive unit is by being intentional about it.
Absolutely. And people pretend that you can separate your personal from your professional life.
Mm.
That's just not true. I mean, you cannot. When someone's dog died or their mother's going into a care home or something's going wrong with their child at school, they cannot separate that. And if you have a culture and organization that can support that whole person, you are going to get more loyalty, more commitment, more discretionary effort from them.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, Kimberly, last year, and I think I said this on the last show too, but I've worked in a lot of companies. I've worked for law firms. I've worked for corporations. I've advised leaders all over. And I'll tell you what, like just the way we had several members of our leadership team last year go through I'm talking about personal, like I went through my housing crisis. We've had some people lost their loved ones. Had people dealing with COVID, all kinds of things. And it was so incredible to see that even though we haven't connected face to face, because of how we're being intentional about our culture and how we're making sure we stay connected, people were stepping up. I mean, when I was going through that housing crisis, I was having Mark text me. Our chief of staff, Tiffany, was checking in on me. Are you okay? Is there anything we can do? And not once did they ask about work.
Right.
Not once did they say, hey, it was just an assume that she's going to do what she needs to do as part of her role. But right now she's focused on this emergency. And I've never seen people stepping up in such a big way. And there was none of that. What you do is sometimes you'll see people step up and then they'll be talking about each other or gossiping about each other behind each other's back. There was none of that. It was all supportive and more like nurturing of let's support each other because, this is something like, and Mark just posted about this on LinkedIn, that we're sort of standing on a mountain and we're looking at the next mountain and it's a higher mountain, right? Like we know when we're signing up for this, we knew that our goal is to build 100 companies in 5 years. It's not going to get easier. It's just going to get more and more challenging. But if we're connected and by having events like the one that you hosted with me, by doing more of that, we all know we're wired for human connection.
And better than that, Sejal, I mean, perfect. What you said, it's absolutely brilliant. And what you need to understand psychologically, because I've done a lot of psychological studies to see how to back this up, is we tend to compare how we feel inside to
Mm,
how other people look outside. And then we always come up short. And then
yes.
the imposter syndrome takes over. And it's like, look, when we are willing to make ourselves vulnerable and say, hey, I'm struggling, I have a challenge, then other people are like, yeah, me too. And they don't have to be this big, strong person, right? The whole winning strategy in the US culture, for example, is this look good, be right, and win. That
Mm.
doesn't allow you to connect as human beings. That's just a group of people trying to posture.
Yeah. And do you agree with me? Because, we have Slack, we have email, we have all of these things, but I think video, coming together like how we did on video is probably the best way to foster the human connection. Do you agree with
Oh,
that?
I don't just agree with you. Data supports you, Sejal. The number one best way to connect is in person. Number two is by video. And
Yeah.
number three is by audio, live audio. And then after that is all those written. Because think about it like this, the amount of meaning contained in the words. Think of a face to face conversation. The
Yeah.
meaning is only a less than 10% of the what's being communicated, and like most
Mhm.
of it is like the tone of voice or the
Right.
visuals. I mean, what does it mean when I bring my little chicken and my dinosaur, ah, and I can communicate something far beyond words? So if you're just using words alone, you're getting less than 10% of the communication. Even the audio alone, it's like 30-40%, and
Mhm.
then the visual is more than half.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so here's my question, because I want to learn from you too. What is your favorite virtual team building activity that you've done for teams and that you can share with all of us so we can take back to our teams
Oh
and figure
gosh.
out how to do this?
Oh my gosh, it's hard to choose my favorite. I'll give you a couple that are really
Perfect.
powerful to start, right? The first I learned from my buddy Patrick Cowden of the Beyond, and he has a little assisted discussion app where you tell each other things like, you ask each other like this: how are you really?
Mm,
I mean, how are you really? It's such a small change, but small change make a big impact. And then he
yes.
prompts you on the app to listen and listen with your whole body and then appreciate and acknowledge what the person says. Because I am so done with people saying, how are you? Fine. Oh, you good. Oh,
Yes.
please. If you say fine or good, that's a social nicety. I understand that. But so asking, how are you really? And letting people do
Mm,
that in small groups and giving them the time to listen and appreciate, very powerful. And then after that, the thing that really helps to build trust, share your life journey. Now, the simple
mm,
version is you put in people into small rooms and you say, tell your 2-minute life story starting at birth. Don't share anything that's trauma inducing. Okay, just whatever you want to share. And you
right.
tell your life stories. Better yet, have them draw. Everyone draws a graph of happiness versus time, a life journey line, and they all can draw it on the same shared document. And then
Mhm.
everybody looks at all these life journey lines and says, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one that has had ups and downs.
Mm,
And the other cool thing that's in common with many of these life journey lines is they tend to be upward and to the right, which is called positivity bias,
mm,
otherwise known as hope. So we start to see
mm.
our commonality. And in one quick visual, you can say, hey, here's 24 people from 10 different countries. But you know what? We've had similar life experiences, ups and downs, and up and to the right with hope.
Oh my God. Yes, yes. And Martin just agreed with you. He said adding one word can make it even more impactful. I love that really, how
Yeah.
you feeling really. It's true. And a lot of times when I ask that question to somebody and they say okay or I'm fine,
Yeah.
I know that they want to share more, right? So
Yeah.
I just pause and I say, you know, if there's anything you want to share with me, I'm here for you. And sometimes just
Oh,
when you just say, if there's anything else you want to share with me, it gets them to feel more comfortable. And at the beginning of the pandemic, one of the things I felt like I was doing was I felt like I was like a therapist more than a
oh,
facilitator because people have felt so disconnected from the pandemic. People,
right.
we've been at home, they hadn't been out for a while, and they just want to communicate with one another. And so, one of the team building activities that I started doing right off the bat is icebreakers, just little icebreakers. And you don't have to just do an icebreaker at the beginning. You can kind of sprinkle the icebreakers in throughout that meeting, make it fun, make it
Right.
interactive, right, with people, so people can just loosen up a little bit. Like you said, it could be something, something like lifelines. I love the way of just even asking people to just share, like, what is something they're grateful for,
Yes, and
right?
put it in a chat. Do a chat storm. Even if you have a lot of people, you say
Really?
1, 2, 3, go, and everybody types into the chat what they're grateful for. Absolutely brilliant. And you can do other things that are really simple, like, hey, everybody, hold up an object that means something to you. And now everybody simultaneously is holding up something from their home. And you get to learn a little bit more about human beings that you're working with. And the cool thing about the visuals, Sejal, is I work with mostly Japanese companies for the last, I don't know, 15 years. And with the need to go virtual, I got to see Japanese colleagues' homes. And they're
Hmm.
sitting there and their children are running around in the background. And I'm just like, I would have never gotten to meet their families. And it was such a precious experience to get to know more about them as human beings.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. So, I hope everybody sees the value of bringing in someone like Kimberly to help create these virtual team building events. But you can also do a lot of this stuff by,
Oh,
what I learned in that 15-minute conversation with Kimberly was so much that I can take a lot of that and design these for the studio by
oh,
myself, right? And there's so
yeah.
much but there's one thing that you said that I wanted to highlight for everybody is, Kimberly told me during that first call was that there's a lot of stuff you can find online of team building and activities. But I think it is important, like we said at the very beginning, to understand what your objectives are. For us at
Mhm.
Nobody Studios, for us is we know we have remote teams. We want to build trust. We wanted people to feel more comfortable collaborating with each other. And we also know that we need to, have high performing teams that are remotely located. So a lot of the people on the same team aren't in the same geographic area. So we needed to create those
Mhm.
connections. So those were some of the things that I had thought about when I went into, because again, it's
Oh.
not about just having a good time.
No,
A
no, no.
lot of, yeah.
And let me tell you some easy ways to make this stuff happen. One of the easy ways is you share. For
Hmm.
example, I facilitate workshops for my clients, and then we may have 24 people from 10 different countries, right? But
Yeah.
I ask each of them, oh, can tomorrow be your special day? Oh, okay, great. What does that mean? That means you bring the icebreaker. Now, some of
Hmm.
these people spend hours researching and finding and preparing these icebreakers, and then they come and they show a little bit of their style beyond the professional veneer. And you also will learn a ton about icebreakers if you let other people contribute to that, because
Yes.
each person brings different things to the table that they found that they thought were exciting. And it's not all about Sejal's the one forcing us to do these crazy
Yes.
games.
Thank you. No, I love that idea. I love like round robin your icebreakers. So
Yeah.
many great ideas. So look, everybody, we wanted to give you a little peek into, part of the show is to give you a little peek inside our culture, what we're doing to make our culture rock and be innovative. You hopefully you got some great ideas today from Kimberly and what we're doing at the studio. We'd love to invite you to join our journey. We're always looking for people to, building 100 companies is going to take a lot of nobodies. So if you want to bring your ideas to the studio, go to our website at nobodystudios.com. If you want to contribute as a builder, as a founder, as someone who just wants to be a consultant, who wants to come in and help us with certain aspects, like I'm hoping to, keep reeling Kimberly more and more in to help me with the culture piece of it, right? Because I want to make it fun. I want to bring that human connection. And I know she's just incredible at what she does. We're doing, as I mentioned earlier, we're doing our equity crowdfunding campaign right now. Nobody Studios is one of the first venture studios to open up our studio to all investors. And so for only $100 minimum, you could be an investor in our studio and contribute to what we want to do, which is to build 100 companies that are meaningful, that could make a positive difference and make the world a better place. So we would welcome you to join our journey. Anything else you want to add, Kimberly?
I think that I'm so grateful to have a company like yours, which is committed not only to building the success of the business, but to building the strength of the team and the culture. So few companies even still appreciate how much of an impact the culture and the human connections have on the business results. Thank you for being a great example of those leading edge companies.
Oh my God, no, thank you. Because it's true. I agree with what you're saying, because when Mark reached out to me, and this was a couple of years ago, and he's like, I'm building their Nobody Studios. We're very early. I'm in my garage, I've got my dog here, but culture is a priority. And I was like, what? Are you crazy? Like, I have startup companies that I've knocked on their doors to say, let me come in and facilitate some workshops. And they're like, no, we're not big enough yet. When we start to scale,
Ugh.
we'll reach out to you. And I'm like, no, you got to do this early on. So thank you for saying that. And I just wanted to give you props, because somebody put in a comment here that said, my first live session here. Thank you for sharing these magic ingredients in today's world. We need more of this. So thank you again, Kimberly, for sharing your wisdom, being a nobody, and being a part of this journey with us. So I'm looking forward to I've got 2 more Nobody Studios Inside Culture live sessions this week. You don't want to miss out on Thursday's session is with Michael Landers. He's also in the San Francisco Bay Area. He's going to be adding on to our culture team and bringing some of his global insights into how are we scaling our culture and being global. There are some challenges that go along with scaling and recruiting the right talent. So we're going to be talking about that. And we have another guest that's going to be coming on Friday. So we've got a couple of sessions this week and a few next week. Please join us again. I really look forward to seeing you again. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye.